We don't really know. I don't know enough. Possibly. Maybe. I don't know. Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of Cain and Jawbone. Today we have 4 pages in 2 sets of 2 because they're both connected to a poem together. Like I said, mentioned in previous videos, I'm just gonna mention the most interesting clues that I found, or ones that I feel like hold the most ground into I think we have to go into this direction, or this is what it means. There are a lot more things that I found, but yeah, you can read all of them in the document that I've set up, Google Docs, which you can find in the description box down below. So yeah, let's just get started. I'm gonna go through them relatively quickly because I feel like a lot of them kind of work together. So yeah, the first 2 pages are page, can you see it? 41 and 93. They are together connected by a poem, and I'll show you the pages. So we have here page 41, and then we have 93. So like this poem continues on in this page. So in these 2 pages, we have mentioned a few names, or it's very important. You guessed it right, Henry. And also mentions Charles Goodfellow. I couldn't find like a character name, a writer, or a person about it, so we're gonna take the name and maybe it means something in like relation to another page. Also very important, written from a female POV, which we have multiple pages of. And I think that's very important. I think there is at least one. I mean, at the beginning I was like, there's one story written by a woman, and the others seem like at least male writers. But maybe there are 2. I don't know. So the first clue that we have is the kind that had made England terribly at sea. So made England terribly at sea is a reference to Treasure Island, the novel. Other than that, I don't really have a specific, if it means more, or we go back into it, or that it relates to anything from Treasure Island. There is, however, on the next set, a literary reference that could also be meaning as in Treasure Island, but could also have something to do with Shakespeare. It could have something to do with like a lot of other different literary works that have been mentioned before in other pages. So all in all, what I'm basically saying, like, it's interesting to remember Treasure Island. Maybe it relates to another page or something else that is mentioned in Treasure Island. I don't know, but it's on the opening sequence of Treasure Island. We're talking about how English was made terribly at sea by Spain, which may also mean something somehow. Then we have a second clue, which is sometimes to catch a whale I had cast a spread over the windmill. So this is a combination of 2 different sayings. A mix of 2 sayings. The worst one is throw a cap over the mill, which consequently is also mentioned in Don Quixote. And it means to act in a deranged, reckless, or unconventional manner. Then we have the second saying, which is a spread to catch a mackerel. Means to sacrifice something of little value in the hope of gaining something better. And then we naturally also have like to catch a whale could mean that like she has gotten married to someone very rich. So it could have the double meaning. It could have one singular one. We don't really know. We're also talking about Selfridges in Bond Street. It's really well written. Yes. So Selfridges is for the rich. Bond Street is for the super rich. And basically the part in the anecdote that stands is I could now get mold and iod on the Selfridge side, though by no means in Bond Street, when I said means, I meant, of course, lawful ones. So basically what it's saying to me is like these people, or she's now rich enough to, by legal means, to shop at Selfridges, which does require a significant amount of money, and they are also have enough money to shop at Bond Street, but they've like added to their wealth, so they're now like super wealthy. But she can't shop there because then people are gonna ask questions like, how do you get that much money? Like, how are you that rich? And she can't do that. But they do have it. So the person she's married to, or the family she's married into, do illegal things. Then we have, I remembered Henry's favorite quotation, which is then the poem. And the poem is it's called Mary Gloucester by Rudyard Kipling. It's a deathbed monologue by a wealthy ship owner and shipbuilder, St. Anthony Gloucester, addressed to his only surviving child, who does not speak. Again, that was why I was thinking ships could also be interesting for Treasure Island, because obviously they also need ships and they go for prize and it's illegal, and so like maybe Treasure Island is a more common theme amongst this story, or like kind of slight references throughout it. Possibly, maybe. We go over to page 93. Had not the author of Wills of a Tayside Inn said of them that they were the living poems and that all the rest were dead? The author of Wills of a Tayside Inn is called Henry. It's called Henry Wadsworth, which, I mean, at this point means that we're referencing Henry. And he said to the people, them, whoever them are in this instance, that they are the living poems, and that is because in the book, The Wills of a Tayside Inn, which was written in poems, all those poems were based off of real people in the Wayside Inn, in a tavern, in the inn in Massachusetts. So that's probably what it's referencing. Then we have, again, and this is very important, The Singer of Wimpole Street, which is something that we've seen on page 23 as well, which in like previous videos we also came across The Singer of Wimpole Street, which is Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And to make your belief stronger, that's exactly who we mean in the next sentence of that. Had not the singer of Wimpole Street said that they were binding up their hearts away from breaking with the cerement of the grave? And this is kind of a same sentence as one of her poems by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. So in that poem by Browning kind of talks about the end of summer, that it's like now summertime. So maybe this one story plays itself in summer, late spring. We have that change of season. Because I feel like that's important, because we also, I think, here and there come across to it that maybe mention a different season. So that might be interesting to keep an eye out for. So we have two more. One, it's like, those little Bunny and Perry, pro and con, had been added hammer and thongs on the center cord between the two lobes of my brain. So Bunny and Perry is probably a reference to two tennis players, which are Bunny Austin and Fred Perry. They kind of were the great tennis players of their time, at least in the UK. And they often came across each other. They were like the top two. Sometimes one would win, sometimes the other person. They were kind of like, I think, slightly different styles, but it was always kind of entertaining to watch. At least that's what I understood. I think that like this is exactly what he meant. There's also something to say that they ended up starting certain business-like parts together on certain levels. They worked together. That was like around the time the book came out. So I'm slightly on the fence of whether we have to see it as like two rivals who often clash together within a professional field, or where they already like, people are like, oh, they're also like friends off court, and they like kind of go back and forth between titles, but they also still like each other. because that wasn't like very publicized before the book came out, but like kind of at that time, like during and mostly after. So yeah, I don't know enough. I don't have enough insight into the history of tennis in the UK to know like when that started playing. And then the last one, and it's the very last sentence, is that this thought process when I tapped this wire had been calling her a Cambridge week. And Cambridge week is a week in May, and there's a female character called May. So May is also a character who's mentioned. So basically these two pages, we have Henry, we have Charles Goodfellow mentioned, and May mentioned as a character. It's from a female POV, which I think she is married to Henry, I reckon. Mentions of Treasure Island, which could be interesting because they also talk about getting money through illegal means, and obviously Treasure Island talks about pirates and ships, which also consequently leads to the poem that links these two pages together, who's about a ship owner talking to his son. So yeah, that's kind of that. I'm pretty sure I will link to other pages as well. So the next set of pages, the two pages that we mentioned, is page 12 and page 15. We see that here, page 12, and then page 50. Again, with the poem, like it nicely follows up. So these two belong together. We have a little bit of less clues, especially clues that I'm sure about for these two pages. One, there are no specific names mentioned, there are no specific places mentioned for this one. So I'm not really sure who, what, where, when. We're gonna go look at the clues that we do have. We start with page 12, and one of the first sentences is, "Then I fumbled 2 aspirin tablets in my mouth. No coward's King Charles' head." So there's a lot to unpack here. We have Noel King, which has a very famous quote apparently about aspirin. People said he was probably addicted to it, but he basically kind of said, like, hey, the show must go on, just take aspirin and go out there. Because he was a playwright. And I think also actor himself. But I think he said this in his role as a playwright and stage organizer, producer, director. I don't know the names for it, but like someone who also like he writes the plays, and I think he's also active on the night itself. But then they have the King Charles' head. So like King Charles the First, who was beheaded. So probably this person has like a very big headache, takes to aspirin because he feels like otherwise he would rather chop off his head, or like he will lose his head. Something that sends. So I think we have to just look out for someone on other pages as someone who has a headache, or have some reference to a headache to make sure that we understand that these two pages are connected. The next clue is it is a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case. This sentence, the cigarette case, this sentence is a direct sentence line from one of Oscar Wilde's plays, The Importance of Being Earnest, which is basically a play that kind of mocks the elite, the Victorian high society. It's kind of like a fun play on that and kind of puts it into the extreme. Later on in the next page, we also have a direct sentence from Lady Bracknell, who is a character from this play by Oscar Wilde. And also we've seen in other pages he is mentioned before, so maybe that also really matters, and that these pages connected to the other pages where Oscar Wilde is mentioned. So we have a next clue, which is from the sentence, "He might answer to the same name as the man who sang, 'Ah, are you digging my grave?'" And this is a song written by Thomas Hardy. I don't think we've come across the Thomas before, or a Hardy. I don't have any idea of anyone with that name. But yeah, again, keeping it in mind so that if we do see it, we know that these kind of belong together. The next sentence after this is like, but a softer fellow I had rarely seen. On velvet, yes. On velvet I would have trusted him, but not on cinders. And I think this means that if that person is rich, or if you like velvet, you trusted him. Cinders, like you have nothing, you have barely anything left. I wouldn't have trusted him. So it's written by Thomas Hardy, but in that poem, it also talks about the flower rue, like immediately after it, which honestly is often flouted with like it's wealthy or you're married wealthy, and also is known as the herb of grace. It could mean something, it could have a reference that's later on used before, because we do also have a lot of pages mentioning flowers. Yet the keen eyes bent like small topaz searchlights over the writing. Topaz, like obviously is a gem. It's often, I think, referenced as like a blue gemstone, but there are multiple colors, but the most common colors for topaz are either light blue or golden, like golden brown. So I think those are two very specific eye colors. So we just like blue or golden eyes. Could be interesting that we maybe come across a character who does have these eye colors, or like mentioned later on as well. Then we have the poem, which is the golden one is gone from the banquet, she beloved of Atenetus, the swallow, the bride Homonea, which is referencing to people from like Greek mythology, Romans, as well as kind of history, partly Greek, I think, just mythology. But anyways, these two come together because they were married, and which is important to know, because after the poem, I wonder if I should succeed in hurting the girl, but I think of her no more. Now, the name of the beloved of Ateneus, so Homonea, she is called Claudia, which I felt like is a common enough name that we also could definitely see in the UK in the 1930s. So yeah, maybe the girl he couldn't hurt anymore is called Claudia, or something like that. And then we have the direct quote from Lady of Bagnall, which we're going to finish off as, is the quote. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that reminds one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. So again, also rich people. But I think these two pages are more of we're making fun of them rather than taking that seriously. The 2 pages previous to also obviously talk about rich people, but like more in the sense of like they're not making fun of it. So this could either just mean that this narrator is someone who's of lower standing than rich people, or is actually rich and looks around and is like, this is what it's like. Think level of Lady Whistledown. Or like, you know, she's rich, she's part of the higher society, but also sees that like, it's very pompous. Like, there's a lot of stuff that like doesn't really mean anything, but you know, this is what we're dealing with, this society that we live in. These ones just, I feel like I didn't have a lot to go off of except for Oscar Wilde, which is someone that we've seen before. It could also just mean that the author just really enjoyed referencing Wilde. Yeah, if you have any ideas, or you feel like, I don't think that's what it means, what you think that it means, just leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It does really help out with the algorithm. And then I see you guys again next week. Up until then, good luck with figuring it out, and most importantly, happy reading!